What's up, guys? It's me, Michael Givens, and today we're going to be reacting to who would win Kong versus King Kong. Not exactly in that order, but you know what I mean. They're all Kongs. Um, so the last time I think I reacted to anything King Kong related was like a couple years ago. But you can imagine I am a Kong fan. The Godzilla versus King Kong. Well, Godzilla versus Kong, because it's not King Kong, because it's his character is not owned by Universal anymore. That is why he's not called King Kong anymore. But anyway, I was Team Kong, even though he lost. Still Team Kong. I'll get to that in a little bit. But in this case particular, this is going to be a battle between these three, technically two, because one of them is just a younger version of the other one. So technically, but it's going to be made as if it's three individuals. So let's get on it.
Another day in the battle arena. Well, we've got the Battle of the Kongs. King Kong from King Kong versus Kong from Kong Skull Island versus Kong from Godzilla versus Kong. So who's coming on top here? Well, let's find out.
Oh man.
Okay, so there have actually been a few incarnations of King Kong that have come out these past few years. Starting way back in 2005 with Peter Jackson's King Kong. Then we got Kong Skull Island.
That one, King Kong, the Peter Jackson's King Kong was my favorite, man. That one's the one that I grew up with. In my personal opinion, is the best incarnation of Kong. Like, to this day. Like, even with Godzilla versus Kong, like, don't get me wrong, that Kong comes close. He comes close, but the King Kong from Peter Jackson still holds up, even to this day. Like, even the CGI, man, still holds up surprisingly well, man. And I just like him. I feel like they fleshed him out as a character much more than uh, the one in Kong versus Godzilla. Don't get me wrong, he's okay. He's fine. I like him. But it's just they have a sort of mystery towards him. There's barely any dialogue centered around him. And I feel like that's what makes his character much more stronger versus in this new one with Kong versus Godzilla. There's a lot of talking. Like, the humans are basically talking exposition about the monsters instead of us just kind of experiencing what they're going through, without words. I feel like that is one of the reasons why that is much more powerful. Because when you think about in the Peter Jackson's King Kong, there's no talking around King Kong. Like, well, the only person around him is the Lady Anne, and she doesn't really talk. There's no talk. There's barely any talking. She'll say like a few things, but that's it. It's mostly just silence and just gestures and facial expressions from King Kong, and that is just speaks much more volume. I just went off.
And now we've just been hit with Godzilla versus Kong. And so my genius brain was thinking, what would happen if we threw all these Kongs together in a fight? Who'd come out on top? Now, obviously, you can't just throw them all in a ring together as is. The big Kong...
Yeah, that's what... Yeah, sorry for pausing. You're gonna have to get used to it. If you don't like the pausing, just go. Yeah, that is one thing I was just realizing is like, one of the Kongs is like way smaller than the other two. So are they gonna like just have them all be the same height? I'm assuming that's what they're gonna do.
Step on them. Just rip them apart. Even little baby Kong. I know little is relative here, but still. So we gotta bring them all up to the same size. So now who wins? Well, let's start out by taking a look at strength. Now, in 2005, Kong is able to shake and break trees just by moving besides them. He's casually flipped over massive stone structures or giant logs and easily broke through large wooden gates. Now, while that's all fine and good, real impressive, probably Kong's most applicable feats are going to be when he made it over to New York City, started wrecking havoc in the streets. He destroyed the theater he was being held inside of, broke through the outside of that building, and destroyed plenty of cars and jumped on top of and crushed military vehicles. He even managed to throw around airplanes, rip them in
Look
half.
at this, man.
Then in Skull Island, Kong was able to absolutely chuck some trees, smack helicopters out of the air, smash them down to the ground, or even just rip them clean in half. He was able to absolutely and consistently manhandle other younger kaiju. Then he went up against the big one, overpowered it too, prying open its jaws and tearing out its tongue, all sorts of stuff. But then Godzilla vs. Kong rolled around. We got to see adult Kong for the first time. He was able to absolutely manhandle Warbats, other kaiju too.
He needed help with that. Okay, with this one, you want to know who I think would win out of these three? The King Kong. The OG King Kong, like Peter Jackson's King Kong. Like, when you think about it, this Kong fought 3. Not 1, not 2, 3 V-Rexes. I know they're not T-Rexes, they're called V-Rexes. All by himself. And they were all bigger than him, and he was holding a woman in one hand. This King Kong could barely take on 2 Warbats. 2. And then they're gonna have him fight Godzilla, the OG Godzilla, man. Like, there's no one. I understand, like, because he was on Skull Island, he has very little to no experience fighting monsters his size. Like, when you think about it, he was able to take on the 2 younger skull crawlers with ease, right? But then as soon as the big one came, he started having trouble, you know? And while he did manage to beat him, everything afterwards is now smaller than him because now he has grown a lot. There is nothing his size anymore. And God knows how long he's been that size for, like, a couple decades. So he's never fought anything for quite some time. And then out of nowhere, OG Godzilla comes out to play, and then he just gets his ass handed to him. You know? Understandably. Like, the first fight was in the water. Godzilla had that. And then after that, he fights the Warbats, and he almost loses. He almost loses that. He only won because the humans helped him. Legit. Almost all the fights he's been in, he needed help from the humans. You know? And it's just like, man, like, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's impossible to think that he could have beat Godzilla. Because from what we saw going in the temple, in Godzilla vs. Kong, there are remains of Godzillas all around the temple, and one of them has an axe embedded in his skull, and the skull is way bigger than our current Godzilla, so it's very possible that these Kongs, which makes sense, you know, because they're used to fighting these Godzillas for quite some time. They know how to kill them. So had it been one of these Kongs, Godzilla probably would have lost, you know? But, yeah, out of these 3, King Kong will win. King Kong will definitely win. He is much more experienced in fighting monsters his size versus either of these 2. And and remember, he's the same height as the current Kong. Godzilla vs. Kong, he is the same height. So he will make full work out of him.
Boy, he was able to stagger the big guy, knock him down. But to be fair, nothing he really did was enough to put Godzilla down for good. But that's okay, because that's what the axe is for. And then Kong went up against Mecha Godzilla too, helped Godzilla overpower the big mech, and this time, Kong and his axe managed to put the big guy down for good. Then we've got durability. And yeah, King Kong's able to take all those bites from those V-Rexes. He's able to take some light gunfire, but he was famously brought down by those biplanes. And to be fair to Kong, it did take plenty of shots to bring him down, but still, those were 1920s biplanes, 1920s guns. A whole lot weaker than aircraft fire going on nowadays. But on the same hand, in Skull Island, Kong didn't really have the absolute best durability either. He was so big that gunfire wouldn't kill him, but you could definitely tell that he noticed it. It hurt him, probably stung a little bit. And his hand even got cut up a bit when he tried to grab onto a helicopter. Now, granted, on the other side of things, just like King Kong did really well against the V-Rexes, Kong did really well in his fight against the big Skullcrawler, but still, for something of his size, not extremely impressive. Then in Godzilla vs. Kong, well, Kong was able to take attacks from Godzilla and Mechagodzilla and get back up and keep on fighting, so he's obviously a whole lot tougher now than he was before. But still, it's just worth noting that durability is Kong's weakest point. He doesn't have any armor or like a scaly hide, something that a lot of other monsters
That is true.
do. He just doesn't. So, he's not going to be able to take attacks as well as other monsters. And he's going to be injured more often. Really, it looks like durability is just Kong's weakest attribute, no matter which movie he's in, which version of Kong you're talking about. That's kind of funny. I never realized that, but I guess it's true. He's got the same durability as if you just blew up a gorilla to his size, which, I mean, does make sense. But King Kong isn't necessarily built as much for durability. Of his big old long arms, he's really built for speed and agility. Like, look at King Kong's fight against the 3 V-Rexes. These dinosaurs were alpha predators on Skull Island. Larger, faster, and stronger than their descendant, the T-Rex, and it's hypothesized that these beasts were what the T-Rex could have been, but were allowed to grow, evolve, unabated for the past 65 million years. Yet Kong is able to battle against 3 of them at once, generally doing this by relying on his speed and agility, leaping and dodging and ducking, holding them all at bay until he could take them down. To make it even more impressive, King Kong did all of this while defending Anne, holding her in one of his limbs at all times. Kong was even able to make the transition to the city quite easily as well, even managing to evade gunfire while he was at it. We didn't really see much of Kong's speed and agility in Skull Island, though, although he did jump over a helicopter and put some moves on the big Skullcrawler. But then in Godzilla vs. Kong, well, Kong was just ducking and dodging all over the place, running all around in order to avoid Godzilla's atomic breath. So that's who we've got. That's what they're capable of. Who's coming out on top? Well, I actually think Kong Skull Island is coming in last year. Because he's a baby. He's a little kid. I don't think he's going to do too well against 2 fully grown adult gorillas. I mean, he struggled in his fight against the big one, while King Kong beat 3 dinosaurs his same size at the same time. An adult Kong fought against Godzilla, someone who is just leagues and leagues above any Skullcrawler. So yeah, Baby Kong is coming in last.
Yeah, that was expected.
A blown up King Kong can beat him, and obviously an older, wiser, and more experienced version of himself could beat him too. Now, the real fight is between King Kong and Kong.
Yeah.
And there, I think it's Kong. Because King
Really?
Kong beating 3 dinosaurs at once is super impressive. We've never seen Kong have to deal with so many kaiju at once. But for the purposes of this fight, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're not fighting against 3 dinosaurs, they're fighting against each other. And I think Kong makes a much stronger argument, being able to win that fight mostly because he uses weapons. I mean, even if we take away his axe, he'll still make do with what's around him. This is just an inherent.
Yeah, but so would King Kong.
Kong uses weapons and fights. And if you've got 2 gorillas in a fight, where they're equally strong, equally tough, equally fast, but one can use weapons, the other can't. One carries around a giant war axe, the other just uses his fists. Guess which one I'm picking? Yeah, it's the guy with the weapon. This is actually a super cool fight. I'm glad I came up with it, so props to me. And I think 2005 Kong can dominate little baby Kong in some parts of this fight. But I definitely think he's met his match with big old adult Kong. So yeah, the King Kong from Godzilla versus big old adult Kong is coming out on top here. He wins. But what do y'all think? I would love to.
I personally disagree, mostly because while the Godzilla versus Kong will use weapons to his advantage, when he was fighting the Warbats, he lost. He was about to lose. You know, like, I mean, he could have used, I mean, there wasn't really much he could use, but that's basically what I'm saying is, like, if they're, depending on where they're at, where they're fighting at, if it's a place like, you know, like Skull Island, where it's just trees and rocks, I'm sorry, I'm thinking King Kong is gonna win, because both their environments where Kong was fighting the Warbats and King Kong was fighting the V-Rexes were very similar. They both had trees, it was both jungle and rocks and stuff like that, and Kong was more effective of using the things around him to his advantage than, let's say, Kong and Godzilla versus Kong. You know what I mean? Personally, I think King Kong would win. Especially if they're like the same size. I'm sorry. King Kong is just more ruthless in his fighting than Kong was. You know, like, especially for the fact that the current Kong, his fighting techniques are very much like a man. He fights like a human. Versus this Kong, the one in Peter Jackson's King Kong, like, he fights like a regular silverback gorilla, like how you would think a silverback would fight. Very just brute force. And I feel like that would win. Not to say that he couldn't use weapons. I mean, he used a rock and smashed that V-Rex's head in, so, you know. But what do you guys think, you know? Do you agree with him or do you agree with me? You know? Don't forget to subscribe to his channel. And if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time, man, peace.